Airline Ethics by Patrick Boozer, Opal Edwards, Davis Cansipper, and Justin O'Brien.
Ebola is a serious viral infection that symptoms over time become increasingly severe and may include vomiting, severe weight loss, bleeding from any or all bodily orifices, including eyes, nose, ears, mouth, and rectum, and internal bleeding. More often than not, Ebola results in death. The U.S. government is open to the idea of a temporary ban in global travel. Is it ethical for the CDC to ban suspected disease-carrying patrons from the travel or airlines, or to quarantine the diseased individual for the sake of the public health? Is it considered a freedom or a right to travel, or should it be seen as a privilege? The ethical issue of quarantine is that it involves the compulsory application of authority over individuals or groups by governing authorities. The ethical issue of quarantine is that it involves the compulsory application of authority over individuals or groups by governing authorities, which presents the issue of the importance of public safety or health of the population against the individual's rights.
The outbreak of Ebola and its effect towards airlines pertains to trending legal issues today. Over the past few years, Ebola has been relevant in the media as well as a global issue. Starting in December 2013, several African countries became infected with the Ebola virus. By August 2014, cases of Ebola were found in other countries where citizens had recently been to Africa. By December 2014, there will be an estimated 10,000 cases of Ebola per week in plagued African nations.
Currently, airlines and the CDC believe that there should not be any sort of flight ban on Ebola victims and the American people. The CDC has already issued precautions and steps to take when boarding aircraft with potential Ebola victims, such as personal health screenings and other health measures to ensure that no Ebola victims are on airplanes and make sure that they are not coming into the United States. However, the GOP and some Democrats are pushing Congress for an overall flight ban, which would not only ban the flight patterns of Ebola victims, but also the flight patterns of all American people.
Most of the countries in the Americas have banned travelers from entering their country if they have visited Guinea, Liberia, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone within recent months. Australia has banned travelers and restricted the visas of anyone coming from the nations previously listed. All African countries have banned anyone coming from or going to Guinea, Liberia, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone due to the fact that they may be carrying the Ebola virus or may be subjected to it. The United States is the only country in direct relation to the Ebola virus to not have currently enforced some sort of ban.
The legal issue that our group of Airline Ethics is focusing on is whether it is legal to ban transportation into our country, not only from our outside travelers, but also our own American citizens. We're also looking into the legalities of forcing our citizens from flying to countries where there are possible cases of Ebola. There are a lot of certain court cases that have to deal with airline ethics, especially when it comes to the protection of movement for our American citizens. One such case is the United States versus Wheeler case in 1920. It involved a kidnapping case. However, the Supreme Court confirmed that the federal government cannot protect our American citizens' right to travel movement throughout the country and abroad. Another such case was Hague versus Aggie that said that the Passport Act of 1926 was actually right, and that the presidential administration may deny or revoke passports for foreign policy or national security reasons at any time. Another case that can come into play is Ken versus Duels, where the federal government limited a person's passport because they thought it was a threat to national security, not so much outbreak of disease, but more on the lines of communism. However, this could be played into the same sort of aspect. There's also a lot of statutory law that has to deal with airline ethics. First and foremost, it's the United States Constitution. It gives us our First Amendment, which is our freedom of speech, our freedom of expression, freedom of association, basically underlining that we as American citizens are allowed to travel anywhere we want, as it is our freedom of expression and our freedom of association to be able to decide what airlines we want to choose and where we want to take them to. On a more international side of things, the International Bill of Human Rights proposed by the UN says that in Article 13, everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state, and that everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his country. Article 12, on the other hand, says, "No one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy, family, home, or correspondence, nor to attacks upon his honor and reputation. Everyone has the right to protection of the law against such interference or attacks." So this, from a global standpoint, shows that American citizens should have the right to travel wherever they want to. Although there's statutory laws that say that the American people should have their freedom valued, there are also statutory laws that say otherwise, such as the Passport Act of 1926, which gives the president complete control over any type of movement if there is in fact any type of security threat. Also outlined in the U.S. Department of Transportation is the Title 14, Chapter 2, Subchapter D, Part 382, Subpart B, 382.21 clause that states that the U.S. government can restrict airlines and ban flights for all types of passengers if there is indeed a security issue.
At this point, it is necessary to examine scholars' opinions on the matter. The government believes citizens shouldn't be able to fly if they risk bringing deadly sickness to someone in the United States. While some would consider the airline companies to be unethical, this could be a necessary precaution. In fact, U.S. flight crews are permitted to deny boarding to passengers based on their symptoms and travel history. However, this authority is taken too seriously on occasion, as when a U.S. Airways crew called in emergency responders after a passenger who sneezed on a flight from Philadelphia to the Dominican Republic joked that he had Ebola. U.S. citizens should be able to travel within the country, but be required to go through a CDC screening test as mentioned earlier in order to ensure safety. On the one hand, the World Health Organization is urging local carriers to maintain flight operations in order to preserve transport links for aid workers and medical cargo. On the other, governments and domestic aviation authorities in countries not yet affected by the outbreak are understandably eager to close their borders. As mentioned earlier with the CDC screenings, the CDC requires airlines to ask travelers with fever-like symptoms if they have traveled to Liberia, Guinea, or Sierra Leone within the last 21 days. The purpose of this is to stop sick travelers in order to protect crew members and other passengers. It is also to prevent travelers that show symptoms of Ebola from traveling in order to control the amount of people that are affected by this virus.
In a legal stance, Congress cannot get away with passing a flight ban on the American people. There is no statute that would allow them legal precedent to support a flight ban. However, the President of the United States does have complete legal authority to place a flight ban on the nation for going in and out of the United States because of the Passport Act of 1926. The Passport Act of 1926 gives the President executive order to do so. We believe that, at this time, U.S. citizens should not be allowed to fly to countries that contain the Ebola virus, where it is spreading rapidly and has a high mortality rate. Some of these countries include Guinea, Liberia, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone. In addition, we believe that a proper screening test should be required for all airline travel. This basically just ensures the safety of American people. However, we also believe that the flight ban should not be a ban to fly to countries where Ebola is not an issue, specifically any place where Ebola is not spreading rapidly and consuming a mass majority of the population. These include countries that either have not experienced Ebola before, but also countries where there are very few cases, such as Sweden and China. The ethical issue with quarantine is that it involves the compulsory application of authority over individuals or groups by the government authorities, which presents the issue of the importance of public safety or health of the population against the individual's rights. Overall, the question of whether or not U.S. citizens have the right to travel with Ebola-like symptoms is still up for debate. This is a problem because not only are people with Ebola-like symptoms restricted to travel, but also the American people. This concludes our airline ethics presentation. Thank you, and feel free to comment below.